This is not April the 1st, this is our new studio. I woke up this morning at home, Michelle was there, and I thought, this isn't April the 1st, this is my life. There we are.
This is no joke. Okay, well, I'm glad you got that out, and I'm glad you said it, not me. Tottenham have released their financial results for the year ending June the 30th, 2004. But here's the question. Can you be sustainable in one breath and ambitious in the next? So, Stefan, I want to just bring to air a couple of quotes from Daniel Levy, a man to my left. Simon knows very well. I know Daniel as well, for that matter, but not like Simon knows him. In his statement, Daniel Levy said, and this is the sustainability part of it, if you like, Stefan, I often read the calls for us to spend more, given that we are ranked as the 9th richest club in the world. However, a closer examination of today's financial figures reveals that such spending must be sustainable in the long term and within our operating revenues. Right, got it. Got that. Thanks, Daniel. But then the ambitious part of it. We currently find ourselves in 14th position in the Premier League, navigating what has been a highly challenging season on the pitch. We are, however, in the quarter-finals of the Europa League. Winning this competition would see welcome silverware and mean qualification for the Champions League. We must do everything we can do to support the team in the final key stages. Sustainability on one hand, all right, Daniel, we get that, but ambition on the other. How can the two go hand in hand? Can they?
Well, I think it's the key issue they've got is the competitive landscape right now, and it's all very well saying that you stressing the importance of sustainability, and nobody would argue that from a business perspective, Spurs have done fantastically well to build a stadium, to continue to qualify for Europe for the most part.
Yeah.
And actually even got into the Champions League. And of course, they do still have the opportunity to get into the Champions League through Europa. The problem is that the competitive landscape is everything we just talked about in respect of Chelsea, in terms of City, in terms of Newcastle, in terms of Nottingham Forest now, in terms of Aston Villa. So it's all very well saying, well, we're going to stick to our very tight principles on a wage bill. But that will mean, and we're already seeing it, they will slip behind. Over the next 12 months, they will slip behind Aston Villa, Newcastle. They're already obviously behind City, Liverpool, Arsenal, United. So they're going to slip behind.
In what sense?
On the wage bill. And we know that there is a very, very strong correlation between wage bill and spend on the first team and where you finish in the league. And they're only fortunate this season that the 14th position that they're in is not a risky position this season, because the three at the bottom.
Do you think Forest's wage bill will exceed Spurs?
No, I didn't say Forest. I don't think Forest will get there.
In the league.
I don't think Forest will get there, but they will rapidly approach. They're going to qualify. I think the likelihood is they're going to qualify for the Champions League, right? So,
but Simon, sustainability clearly comes at a price, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the argument that Daniel will have is the ownership structure of Tottenham is different to the ownership structure of these other football clubs, and if the primary shareholder in Joe Lewis doesn't want to inject any more cash in Tottenham Hotspur, Daniel's wealthy as a result of his association with Spurs. Daniel's wealth is indexed to Spurs. Daniel doesn't have billions of pounds of worth outside of Spurs. So the reality of it is you've got a funding model which is very different from these other football clubs. You've also probably got, and we've had this back and forth between myself and Stefan, different banking relationships, different banking covenants. There might be, like there was at Arsenal years ago, there was an obligation upon the funding of the Emirates that Arsene Wenger stayed as manager. That was a banking covenant. I think there's a banking covenant at Spurs that prevents them from taking their wage structure to a certain level. So there's various reasons, and it might not be particularly palatable to those that are watching the competitive outcomes on the field, but it's a commercial reality of what football's become, which is a business that's now building billion-pound stadiums and running assets that are costing £200 or £300 million a year in wages.
But the fans think that football is about competitive outcomes, and it is.
Well, it is. I mean, but Simon is absolutely correct that if they simply don't have the money. You only get the money from a couple of different places if you're Spurs. You can either get it from the banks, and they're pretty maxed out on the banking side, so you can forget that. The covenants, I think, are less of an issue, because if the money came in from the Joe Lewis Trust, which excludes Joe Lewis, of course, which we know about because they're quite clear about that. It's nothing at all to do with Joe Lewis. But if it came in from the Joe Lewis Trust that's nothing to do with Joe Lewis, then they could, one, have a conversation with the banks about the covenants, and two, would have the capital to actually go out and purchase players. But of course, if the reality is that they can't find a buyer, and the other interesting omission from yesterday's statement that Spurs had, if you look at the statement from last year, he specifically said that he was seeking external investment, and clearly what they've done over the last year, 18 months, maybe even longer, is run a process to try and find somebody to put money into the club or take a piece of the club. Simon, I won't put him on the spot, but I'm sure he knows whether they've succeeded in that. I suspect that the valuation that they're looking for is too high, and that will therefore mean that it will be very difficult for them to find it.
Let's put him on the spot. Have they succeeded in that?
That's for Daniel to discuss, not me.
Do you know?
No, I don't. No.
Maybe not.
No, I don't. I know that they are.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
Stefan
it's
says,
public.
it's pretty much public knowledge.
Yes.
And I suspect
Yeah.
that the valuation may well be high.
Yes.
Will they get their money? I suspect they probably will at some point.
So-
when they get it, different matter.
To me, as a layman, like many people are listening to us out there, Stefan, I mean, you're in the privileged position of having great knowledge in this area. Does it come down to this? Spurs fans can breathe an awful lot easily. Daniel can breathe an awful lot more easily, and certainly Ange can if they win the Europa League. Otherwise, trouble on the horizon.
Well, I think absolutely. I think you've summarised it well. I think if they fail to win the Europa, and of course we know United, the United season is also completely pinned upon the same prize. To win that is transformational.
Yeah.
Especially now because it's £100 million prize in all likelihood. If you can get to, you certainly got the group games, you've probably got a playoff minimum, or you've got a round of 16 games. So you're talking very close to £100 million for a club like Spurs or Manchester United in the Champions League next season. So it's an enormous prize.
And Daniel gets some of the fans off his own back.
Yes, and they can actually invest that money back into the squad in the summer. Now, without that, it's very hard to see, if everything we're saying here is true about they're being tight on cash.
Yeah.
And actually, they physically don't have the cash to invest in the way that they might want to.
Yeah.
Then they're going to have no choice but to be very restrained in the summer unless they've got players to sell. And Spurs don't strike me as a side that at the moment have assets that they can move on, that they want to move on.
Stefan, as you know, this man has owned a football club. Simon, it's a tough thing here for Levy. What's the tough thing for you at Palace? To get fans believing that, hey, this whole thing, there has to be sustainability.
Well, I think we're in different times now. I mean, as we've seen, and as I accused you earlier on of being rather Luddite in your thinking about the sophistication of how football fans see the world.
Thank you.
There was never a space in the football media for these sort of conversations 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. There is now a space for it, and and the reason why there's a space for it is because there's a receptiveness from the fan base.
Yeah.
So there is a pricing in, but the value of being a football fan is, to some extent, you'll price it in but discount it because you want to see a successful football club. So in the end, it comes down to the emotional investment of a sport and football club. Details. You don't care what the balance sheet says. You don't care about the sustainability of football clubs in the longer game. You care about winning in the here and now. So those are the two players that come to play, and that's what makes football so intriguing. You've now got business and sport and money immersed in an endless battle, with football fans saying, with due respect, don't care what you look like as long as you can put some money in. You're seeing that at Reading. Don't care what you look like. In you come, spent a load of money. Now you're fed up with it. Now we do care because you don't want to bankroll it anymore.
Yeah, and look, if you think about from a Spurs fan perspective what they see this morning, and the headlines are going to see over the next couple of days, Nottingham Forest, okay, so big investment, big losses, Champions League.
Yeah.
Newcastle just won a cup, probably going to qualify for the Champions League, big losses. Chelsea, massive spending, possibly Champions League, but definitely massive spending and a complete disregard for the kind of the sustainability ethos that he's talking about. Aston Villa, quarter-final of the Champions League, semi-final of the FA Cup, massive losses. Also not particularly concerned right now about the sustainability of the model, and that's what Spurs fans are going to see and go,
got you.
We want some of that. We've had some of that.
Right.
We where's that gone for us?
Arsenal take on Fulham. Mikel Arteta has been talking. about that match. He's been talking about what lies ahead for Arsenal, even after the season ends, and how this summer is going to be a big one for the Gunners.
The way we planned the five first summers, it was going to be very big, and they were going to have different objectives because the turnaround of players and the objective of those windows were going to be different. But now when you're going to go again, first of all we need to increase the depth on the squad, but as well you're going to increase certain quality and skills that we need to now go to the next step. It is going to be a big one, and we are very excited about it.
So it's going to be a big one. Should we believe him? Andrea Berta comes in as a new sporting director this week. Arteta is saying it's going to be a big summer. In other words, watch this space. We're going to get in amongst it.
Call to action, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you think? Will he act upon that? Will they act upon that?
Well, it's either a Machiavellian manager trying to send a message, or it's a manager that knows that the football club are seeing the opportunity not having been taken this season. And we have to get the balance right, because not every person that sits in a boardroom sits there thinking about winning silver every week. They also think about the economic cost of running a football club. So when we sit in simple terms going, well, you've got to kick on, give them more money, someone's got to provide that money. But I would imagine that the ambition at Arsenal is to win silverware and to win the Premier League. They'll think there's opportunities to do it. There's probably a longer rebuild than a lot of people might think with Man City. So there's no guarantee that Man City are going to re-emerge instantaneously as top of the pile. Liverpool have shown some frailties this year. They're going to have some of their players out of contract. Trent Alexander-Arnold's gone. We'll see if Slot can carry this on for a second season. United, well, that's Hobson's choice.
You don't know what you're going to get.
There. Chelsea, somewhat similar, building, but notwithstanding.
Yeah.
So Arsenal must see this as, this could be an open opportunity. Where have we fallen short? We've fallen short that we couldn't contend for the loss of certain players. I don't think you can contend for the loss of Saka. I don't think any team that has a player like Saka that's so fundamental to what they do could contend with it. So I think there's unfairness in that comparison, but I think there's certain windows of opportunity that they could have taken, should have taken, that creates outcomes that are better, and one of them clearly is the argument that rages eternally about a centre forward. You get Havertz in a conversation, you get this, you get that, and the other, but most people think you need a centre forward,
right? And
they haven't got one. So
and if they start with that and others, that will equal
whether it's the boy that used to play for Amorim over in Portugal, which is they're being indexed to, or it's someone else.
Gyökeres.
I would suspect that Arsenal are going to kick on. Whether they're going to spend 250, I said a couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, so 18 months ago, that Arsenal needed to spend 250 million quid to stand still. And they did. They finished second again. And they spent 250 million quid. Now, what does it take for them not to stand still and move to the next level? That was, of course, also factoring in the fact that Arsenal were participating in the Champions League again.
Yeah.
So now they're back in the Champions League. They're acclimatised to it. They're now doing better in the Champions League than they've previously done. The next thing is wonderful participation. They've got to win something under Arteta.
Yeah,
Otherwise, somewhere along the line, despite Martin Keown or any Arsenal fans' eternal support of Arteta, there will come a point where it goes, well, are we going to win something?
Well, but when he says specifically, we're going to go big, to me that means we're going to spend a lot of money in the summer.
Well, that's a reasonable conclusion to draw. I mean, whether he's speaking from a point of view of an entitled football manager that's putting some pressure on those that he works with alongside on for, or it's because he's already got a structured plan in mind which he's already put into the people that are going to make the decisions, and he's got a green light on it.
Right. I mean, for him to be out there and saying it.
Well, he's got to say something.
In April.
He's got to say something. He's got to sell a vision.
Right.
He's now in the business of selling something. You know, this is P.T. Barnum. I haven't done it again this season. There's been reasons for it. Keep on buying into the bunkum and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And next year we're going to go bigger and bolder and better. The beginning of last season, what did he tell you? We're going to start the season not expecting to lose any games. That was the message. The beginning of next season, the message is, or the end of this season, which is going to culminate in Arsenal winning perhaps nothing. Yeah. Irrespective of their, the game against Real Madrid that is yet to happen. Okay. Got to sell a vision. Yeah.
So Arteta's saying we're going to go big. Let's see if they do.
This is not April the 1st, this is our new studio. I woke up this morning at home, Michelle was there, and I thought, this isn't April the 1st, this is my life. There we are.
This is no joke. Okay, well, I'm glad you've got that out, and I'm glad you said it and not me. A lot to get through. Premier League is back tonight. Amongst the fixtures tonight, Wolves against West Ham, and that makes me think Matias Cunha. And this was Matias Cunha, who has been speaking to The Guardian in the recent break about his future. I couldn't leave the club in the middle of the season in a difficult situation in the relegation zone, but now we're close to achieving our goal of staying up. But I've made it clear that I need to take the next step, says Matias to anyone who cared to listen. I want to fight for titles, for big things. I have potential. In other words, if I'm going to win big things, it ain't going to be with you, Wolves. Now, he's acted upon those comments. He's been a busy lad, Simon. One moment he's telling that to The Guardian. The next minute, he's putting this message out on Instagram.
Hey guys, Cunha here. I only come here to talk about the noise around my name, the interview that I give, and show my point. I don't think a lot of people read the interview.
No, we can see Matias Cunha on Instagram, but we couldn't hear him. And basically, Simon, you don't need to be Einstein to work out that he somewhat backtracked on that.
Sure.
That his comments had been taken out of context. And what I really meant was that as long as I pull on the Wolves jersey, I'm here for your guys, and I will do my job.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is this.
But I took that anyway. I mean, I didn't take away a massive amount of offence on behalf of the Wolverhampton Wanderers fans that seems to be the confected outrage that's now brewing around this particular set of some conversations.
No, but come on, this is him redefining the narrative that he set.
No. I mean, I think it's pretty clear in most people's minds that when he signed a new contract, that it was as much to protect the football club as it was to achieve an outcome for himself. I mean, Cunha is one of those players that people think very highly of, but perhaps they don't think as highly of his behaviour, but his ability they rate. And there was always an inevitability about him perhaps leaving Wolves in the summer. The fact that he has actually signed a contract to protect Wolves' interests, I know has been sort of counteracted by suggesting to everybody that he is for sale, and that means that any commercial negotiations might be prejudiced, but then there might be a release clause in his new contract. So I'm not really offended by someone stating the bleeding obvious. The smoke and mirrors that we all have to endure, which is, it's like that skit that someone did years ago, and it was on social media where this footballer stands in front of the camera and says, I love it here, I love it here, I want to spend the rest of my life here unless I get exactly what I want, and if I don't, I'm off. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That skit that was played out on social media is the reality of what happens. Players are as loyal as they feel they need to be.
But there is a bit of that here, Simon. If you're a Wolves fan, you hear Cunha, and you heard some of the callers yesterday not having him. It's as simple as that. Not having him. He wants to achieve big things. Really? Not with us? Really?
Well, no.
Well, on your way, son.
Well, he's not going to achieve big things at Wolves, because with respect to what Wolves have
But
become,
why sign a new deal which runs until June 2029? I know that helps the club.
But we know why. Because it insulates the club against the dawn raid that some big club might think they're able to do on the player and subsequently prejudice the club. So rather than turn it into a negative, because he's, for whatever reason, he's allowed himself to be put in a situation where loose lips sink ships. He's probably spoken quite freely about the ambitions that he has, and then got himself caught up in his own mouth, and then realised that the reality of that is that it blows back on people like us have gotten hold of it.
He's one of many who does something like that. What would you be? How would you feel if you were Jeff Shea this morning?
I'd say
at Wolves.
Not necessary, but I would say actually the bigger picture for me is I've got you on a contract, so I can control the narrative anyway. So you can say what you wish, and his actions are better than his words, because his actions have signed a contract.
Yeah.
So whilst we might not like the idea, we do live in a world where, what is up is down, we're through the looking glass. Players tell you one thing, and the polar opposite applies. We all know that Virgil van Dijk will have had conversations with his representation about what a deal might look like. It might not be the deal that he wants at this moment in time, and it might not give him surety or certainty right now, but there's no parallel universe where conversations haven't happened. And then we do this silly little dance for the purpose of media shows.
Caused by whom?
Who caused
the
by
player?
Well,
brought about by whom? This has been brought about by Cunha.
Yeah, it was been brought about. Of
course, it is.
It's been brought about by an interview that he perhaps didn't have to do.
Correct.
So then, what do you want?
Spare us.
Radio silence.
No, but
the players spoke.
Spare us all this nonsense, though. I mean, on one breath, I've made it clear that I need to take the next step. I want to fight for titles, for big things. I have potential. I mean, yeah, fine. We'll do that. But why then did you sign a longer term deal that runs till June 2029 and expect the Wolves fans to back you, that you're here to stay? He's not here to stay. He's out of there the first chance he gets.
The Wolves fans won't back him. They'll back him as long as his performances are good.
I'm amazed that you're being so understanding of Cunha's motivation for this.
Because I'm a pragmatist. In this situation, I think most people would have suggested that he was a better player than the current environment he was playing in. He was the reason at times, and some Wolves fans are saying, when I know it was saying yesterday, actually, because of his disciplinary record, he's got himself banned from 7 games. So actually, in as much use to us as you think he might be. But on the field, when he's at it, on it, and across it, he's the best player in that side. Right? So with that in mind, there is always going to be a position that comes along where if a bigger club fancies him, he's going to go. The advantage of what he's done, rather than what he's said, is that Wolves no longer are a hostage to fortune about the economic value they can capitalise on him. Now, whether the Wolves fans want to become all emotional about the fact that a player that was inevitably going to leave has told you the truth rather than a pack of porkies to suggest that he's got his heart with the Wolves fans, kissing the badge every single minute, and he's out of the door.
He does kiss the badge. I saw him in a series of pictures last night.
Because he's allowed to at this moment in time.
God!
What you want from a football player, in all honesty, as a former owner, is the best version of themselves for as long as they're contractually obligated to be so. And if you want to sell them or they want to go,
you want honesty as well, don't you?
He's just giving it to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? In 2 different versions?
He signed a contract, so the football club...
To suit him?
No, of course not.
To suit him, he's giving you honesty in 2 different versions.
He signed a contract with a football club that commercially benefits the football club. And I'm assuming that as a result of this contractual position, it also gives him some sort of degree of certainty that in the event that a bigger football club, of which there are quite a significant few in the Premier League, might want to buy him, Wolves do not get their metaphoric pants pulled down.
Yeah,
like every other club does.
You're talking from an owner's perspective.
I'm talking from the real perspective of what football players, what football clubs, and how it really works, rather than the la-la land of emotion.
So you've got no issue at all with your player going into the media and saying, do you know what, to the Guardian, I cannot do what I want to do at this club. It's too small. I need a bigger challenge at a bigger club, and that's basically my situation. Then goes on Instagram. Sorry about that. I don't really know what I was thinking.
I don't know what he said. We couldn't hear it, but I don't know whether I would like that or not. Probably not.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that his actions have actually put me in a better position. The player. Let's be honest about it. Could that player have not signed a new contract in January?
Oh yes, I agree with you on that.
And the net effect of that would have been what to Wolves?
Well, they
disadvantaged.
Would be, sure.
So now they've got some equilibrium in the conversation about where the player goes and some value in it. But the players talked a little bit out of turn.
In the meantime, what do the fans do?
Which would you rather have? The player.
I'd rather have him not losing all credibility by speaking to the Guardian.
But his credibility with whom?
Wait, in the wider public, with the Wolves supporters. Have you heard about Cunha? He wants out here. Yeah, he's saying we're not big enough. He wants to go to the next step, titles, big things. Yeah. Not with us. Well, really? Is that what he thinks?
But I think.
All right.
But I also think.
Let's see about that. Then he's on Instagram. Now, what I really meant was, come on, Simon. Even Vitor Pereira's bought into what he's saying. He's committed. This is the present.
Yeah,
the future, I don't know.
But that's true.
Well, brilliant.
But today you can bank on. Tomorrow you have to wait and see what happens in it. The bottom line is that as long as he performs for Wolverhampton Wanderers in the best possible version of himself, I think most football fans, beside the obsessive fringe that don't see anything other than people dying at a football club as complete loyalty, are realistic enough to go, you know what? If we can get proper dough for him, and as a result of it, given the fact that our football club has been running on fumes economically because the owners have changed their model, then maybe that's the lesser of two evils.
We're in the company of top former boxer Carl Frampton as we hit the home straight today. Carl, an interesting development yesterday. We were in the company of one Liam Cameron, who on the 20th of this month goes in again against Ben Whittaker. Of course, showboating fame, but decent fighter as well. That one is live on talkSPORT. But then there was the case of, is it 12 rounds or is it 10 rounds? What is actually going on? Let's have a listen to what Liam Cameron told us.
There's a mess about what contracts, what no one's letting me speak about, so I'm going to try on here. We've signed for a 12-round fight, and they're trying to push it for a 10-rounder, doing everything they can, and I'm not budging. I'm having a 12-round fight. And this is what I tried to do it on. Gloves are off. They won't let me speak about it. And on Sky Sports, they didn't air my interview. This is the problem we're having, is that I've signed a 12-round contract fight when I was signing contracts, I thought he couldn't barely get through 5 rounds. This was weird. So like a couple of weeks went by, and like they tried to send another contract for a 10-rounder. So that shows me the confidence levels. I'm ready for 15 rounds.
So that was Liam Cameron. I mean, what is going on? No better person to ask than Liam Cameron's promoter, Frank Warren. 12 rounds or 10 rounds, Frank? Where are we with it?
Well, he's got a contract for a 12-round fight. I mean, he didn't draft the contract. It was drafted by Boxer, sent to him, signed by them, and signed by Liam and his manager. It's a 12-round fight.
So are Boxer now trying to make it a 10-round fight?
Well, they are. They've been trying to do that for quite a while now, and Liam's not budging. But there's some chats going on. Maybe there's a way forward that there's a financial solution for it, and Liam's been asked to basically take away an advantage in my opinion, him fighting over 12 rounds, bring it down to 10. Then they're going to have to sort him out financially.
Have you heard much like this in the past,
No,
Carl?
never heard. I've no idea who has given that contract over to Cameron's team to sign, and obviously Ben Whittaker signed it as well without reading it. I understand that, because as a boxer, a lot of times you're handed these contracts by people who you trust, and they're supposed to do it for you and just say, put a signature on that or whatever. But there's been a royal mess up here.
Go on, Frank.
But hang on, the people he trusts signed for a 12-round fight, and that's what, as you heard him say in the interview, that was great for him. So his manager Lee Eaton and Queensbury have done a great job for him.
What do you think the likely remedy is, Frank?
Well, if he wants to give way on it, they're going to have to pay him. That's if he wants to do it. He may not want to do it.
What would you advise him to do?
Me, I would tell him to sit tight.
It's only in boxing, Carl, isn't it?
Well, I can't hear what Frank's saying, but I imagine he's saying it's 12 rounds, a contract signed. If I'm Frank and if I'm Liam Cameron, I'm saying it's a 12-round fight. What's it going to look like if you're Ben Whittaker and you're what are you going to do? Not fight now because it's a 12-round fight? He has to fight, or he's going to be a laughingstock.
It's a bit of a mess, isn't it, Frank?
Well, it's not a mess from our side. We signed a contract that was negotiated and presented.
Yeah.
If somebody look, the promoter has sent a contract for 10 rounds to Whittaker, to Ben, and he signed for a 10 round, and they've sent a 12 round to us. So that's not down to us. That's down to them.
I mean, Frank's absolutely right. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Whittaker, Ben has been built up into being a star. There's a lot of questions about the first fight in terms of did he swallow it or not, and people have got different views, right? They've had to force him into this fight. Whittaker's not filled the vacuum with any conversation, and now you've got this added insult to injury, which is people are now beginning to really question Whittaker's credentials. Now people are going to say, well, why don't you want a 12-round fight?
Yeah.
And Liam Cameron has the potential here, and I'm sure Frank agrees with this, if he beats Whittaker, he finishes Whittaker's career in terms of lots of ways, because the Whittaker balloon has been built up in such a way that there's going to be no air left in it. If Cameron finishes him and beats him in this fight, a lot of people think he was beating him in the first fight, I don't know where Ben Whittaker's going to go. And with a 10-round fight and a 12-round fight, I think Ben and his team, with due respect to Boxer, have made him look like a bit of a tit.
Yeah.
Right. Frank, moving on, your man Daniel Dubois is back. What's next? Is it Dubois Usyk, or Derek Chisore's been thrown into the frame? Does he feature somewhere in this?
Well, I hope it's for the 4 belts. That's what we want. That's the fight we want to make.
Aren't they going to strip the WBO away, though, Frank? Isn't that a realistic possibility that it's going to be stripped away?
No, not at all. The rules are quite simple. They put the WBO to move things along, have put out that they're the next mandatory in line out of the 4 governing bodies. They've ordered that negotiations should take place now between Joseph Parker and Usyk, and Usyk has 3 choices: 1, to take the fight; 2, to go for a 4-belt unification, because the rules of the WBO allow that. A unification takes precedent over a mandatory defence; or 3, vacate the belt.
See, I would have thought you'd have liked the interim, the WBA going to Parker fighting Joshua potentially beating Parker, and then you got Fury back in the ring.
No, what I want to see, the fight I want to see, I want to see the rematch between Usyk and Daniel, because it's Daniel Dubois, a different Daniel Dubois, who's on a roll. There's a lot of controversy in the first fight, and that will fill up Wembley Stadium, no doubt in my mind.
Okay, Frank, not for the first time, thank you so much for joining us. Frank Warren with us this lunchtime. Let's finish off today, Carl, with how you see it. What ideally is a fight in the heavyweight division that you want to see, featuring Usyk, Dubois, or maybe Chisora?
For me personally, I think Usyk. I think Dubois is a better fighter now than he was the first time. I still think there was a bit of controversy around the low blow. I don't think it was low. I think it was borderline. But I do think Usyk used all his experience. He was hurt and he just took his time, took as much rest as possible. If the referee had started counting, no doubt in my mind Usyk would have got back up and probably went on to win the fight. But Dubois is a different fighter now. I would be concerned if the IBF have ordered it. If for Derek to fight Dubois, I would be very concerned for Derek in that fight. I love the man. I think he's a great character, been great for boxing, but Dubois is absolutely flying at the minute. He's young, he's fit, he punches hard, he's fast, and I'll be worried that Derek potentially could get hurt in that fight, and it wouldn't be nice to see.
Okay, yeah. You surprised about the rise of Daniel Dubois? Where he's got himself to, where he might even get himself to?
Yeah, I think I am. After, we seen what happened to Joe Joyce, I was kind of outspoken a bit and says he bottled it a bit or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, although he had a bad injury, I still think he made the decision to stay on his knee. Now, he would have been in a serious amount of pain. I think it probably should have been up to the corner to pull him out. But what happened. What he's done after that, the fight with Big Baby Miller, he had to fight through a lot of adversity. Hergovich as well. I think the kid's riding the crest of a wave at the minute. He's full of confidence, and I think he could be the guy that takes over the division from Usyk.
Really? If Dubois goes in against Usyk, this could be the moment.
When Usyk decides to pack it in, there's a chance he could beat him in the next fight. I think he's a better chance than he had the first time, and he done okay in the first fight.
Carl, as always, thank you so much. Manchester City, the 115 charges against them, the charges that they face. When are we going to get an outcome? It seems like every single day. Is this the day we're going to hear Manchester City's fate? Are they innocent, as they say they are, or are they guilty? When do we know?
Well, I think it's a shame that we don't know actually when it's coming. I think it would have. I think for the Premier League and for City, I think that from the very early stages they should have set out an expected timetable so that you don't have the situation where City fans of other clubs, and also probably most importantly City employees, are every day wondering whether something that could be very transformational for the club is going to drop. And so I think that they should have done more in terms of the order. When are we going to find out? Well, look, I think in reality we are now coming into the period that's the kind of earliest practical period in which it could have been released. If you have a 12-week trial, it is going to take some time for the decision to be written up and for the decision to be made and for them to make sure that everything that they say in that decision is as appeal proof as possible. Okay, because what no panel wants, no tribunal wants, is for immediately everything that they've written to be challenged, either because it misrepresents what actually happened, what was heard, what was said, or in terms of the law. So
and the process gets even lengthier.
Well, yes, and it gets undermined. So
can I put you in the spot? When you came in the studio this morning, you said, "Man City, yeah, I might have something."
Well, unfortunately, it's the negative. I can tell you that as of this weekend, the club had not heard anything in terms of the decision. That is not not a club source, but I know that is the case, and that they also do not know the precise date on which they are going to learn the decision. So the idea that Pep's been saying we're due to hear by whenever. That Pep doesn't know because nobody knows. So the people that know are still the tribunal, and that has not yet been sort of disseminated out to the parties. So we are still some way away, probably, because at very least you would expect they're going to have a few days to review a decision for sort of minor errors and typos. So even once it drops with the clubs, it's probably then at least another week away from a release. The other part of it, of course, is that people are busy. So if you look, Lord Panic is now on other cases. So he's in the High Court today on a high-profile case that you'll read about in the papers. The professionals around the table have other things that they're working on.
Yeah.
So when that decision does drop, and there's then follow-on parts of it, such as, okay, well, what's the penalty? What's the sanction? That then could take some time before we even have a hearing around the sanction.
If I was to put you right on the spot, when?
I
the month of April?
Maybe not. I mean, people will be bored of me saying the same things.
No, I get it.
We're now in the early stages. If this was, as I said before, if this was a High Court 3-month trial, we wouldn't be hearing about this in 2025. We'd be hearing about it in 2026 at the earliest.
Right.
So they're going relatively quickly.
Sure.
It could come, in April, but it really wouldn't be a massive surprise if it was some time away. Unfortunately, that is the nature of these allegations and the seriousness of what's been alleged and the length of the trial that was heard in 2024.
In the time, Simon, we have left with Stefan here, and we only have a couple of minutes left. You owned a football club, Simon. Is one club ownership so last year? Now we hear the latest is that the owners of Liverpool, FSG and Paris Saint-Germain, our friend Nasser Al-Khelaifi, battling to purchase the Spanish club Malaga as they look to develop their multi-club models. Where are we going with this multi-club ownership? That seems to be the future in the eyes of the big guns.
Well, yeah, you've summarised it. I mean, what that does, and whether you subscribe to the view that somehow multi-club ownership compromises integrity and the sporting fabric of the sport, is one argument you can advance. The idea of a multi-club ownership being challengeable was kicked into the long grass when RB got to do what they did years and years ago, and created two football clubs that were clearly owned by one entity, and then debated the fact that they were independent of one another. I'm conflicted by it. I recognise that things move on, and the game has changed, and the nature of the beast and the animal has moved on to something different to what it was a number of years ago. But there was a principle and a reason behind ownership of one club or controlling influences, and it's laughable when you see Jim Ratcliffe. They provide gymnastics of getting around the fact that they are multi-club owners in majority shareholdings, with Nice being the classic case in point. I don't like it, but I recognise the fact it's the nature of the animal now.
Should there be a cap on it? The number of clubs that one club can own, Stefan?
Well, there's going to be a sort of self-guiding cap anyway, because what's happening is these teams with relatively small amounts of investment are being very successful. Because if you look at have a look at Ligue 1 at the moment, you've got Nice are in fourth. Nice are closer to qualifying for the Champions League than United are, right?
Yeah.
So Strasbourg are in sixth.
Yeah.
So what's happening? And once that happens, then the parent club has to make a decision as to where they put their focus.
When you bring financial governance into play, and you'll be able to manoeuvre players between football clubs and do preferential deals between one football club to another, you make a mockery of the whole system, suggesting that financial governance can actually have any teeth. Who's going to establish the value of a player when various football clubs can establish it amongst themselves, who are part of the same group, and create the transaction which actually overcomes the governance?
Sure. Well, we'll see. The battle for Malaga. Will it be Liverpool or will it be PSG who succeed? Stephen Boston, thank you once again, my friend.
Cheers.
Daniel Levy at Tottenham has been saying, he often reads calls for us to spend more, given that we are ranked as the 9th richest club in the world. But a closer examination of today's financial figures reveals that such spending must be sustainable in the long term and within our operating revenues. But this is Daniel Levy and Tottenham, who want to win the Europa League. So can you do both? Can you be sustainable and lift a European trophy. In other words, how long can Daniel Levy continue selling sustainability at Tottenham? I know, Simon, I know we seem to be in Daniel's back when we talk about finance and we talk about ambition at the same time. But Spurs fans, I would predict, who are calling in, would put ambition and winning something before sustainability comes into the conversation. Stefan and Simon are at your beck and call. David is a big Tottenham fan. David, you're first up, and I think you're calling from down under in Sydney, Australia. Am I right?
You're right. Hello, guys. It's Spreadsheet Dave again, calling from Sydney. Very interesting conversation this morning. I think we need to look at the context of this, because when the stadium was devised and we were going to move into it, we were sold the dream that the stadium would enable the football team to compete in order to buy better players and pay the salaries to attract better players. Indeed, Daniel Levy, when he was talking about the appointment of Paratici on Tottenham channel, he said that, asked the question about the non-football revenues, he said that every penny, and these were his words, would go into the first team. He's now turning around and saying, well, we may be the 9th richest club in the world, but we have to kind of watch the pennies. Now, we may be, I think, 6th or 7th in the Premier League in the salaries that we pay, but top of the league, once again, and another trophy for us, is the highest paid chair is Mr. Daniel Levy. And another guest that you have on your show from time to time, Kieran Maguire, has said a senior director has earned more than £50 million since the club changed hands in 2000. And other questions that I have at the moment is that if we are cutting our cloth accordingly, according to our owners, who are creating a multi-purpose entertainment venue in North London, I'd like to know how the hotel build is being financed, and why are our owners deciding to invest in building a hotel when we're being told we've got to cut our cloth accordingly.
Well, David, I tell you what, mate.
The reality.
Go on. Finish your point. Finish your call.
Yeah, look, Tottenham fans, and again, there's another protest this weekend, change for Tottenham on Sunday. But, the question is sustainability. We are, on the whole, believe it or not, a sensible lot. But, we're driving down the ratio of revenue and salaries again. And what we want to see as a supporter base, that we go out and buy some fit-to-go players, pay them good salaries, and have a spine that can be played alongside these promising players.
Stephen, I'll put that to Simon first. David, tune in. Here's Simon on that. Is he asking too much?
No, not really. I mean, I maintain, I think it's a rather moot point to suggest that someone's earned 50 million out of a football club over 25 years as an example of how the football club should and shouldn't be run, and how much salary Daniel Levy gets and whatever else. I mean, we could turn around and say how much money's been spent on players and how much money's been wasted on players and how many salaries players have been paid that haven't been particularly good at their jobs. The bottom line is football fans expect ambition from their club. They expect aspiration. And if Spurs aren't delivering it, and Daniel Levy isn't delivering it because his pursuit of sustainability and the model that he wants to work to isn't going to give them the outcomes that they want, then they have the right to say it. I think that I personally think with Daniel that his road is running out in terms of the opportunities he has to defend his position. I think that Spurs...
Wow, that's the first time you've said that.
I've said it for a long time.
His road is running out in terms of defending...
I defend Daniel against one-sided arguments because I've been an owner and I've been on the other side of the equation, and I can't help but defend owners to some extent because I know what the other side of the conversation is. But I also suggest that Tottenham Hotspur cannot go around not achieving things. Now, of course, we've had COVID. Since the stadium was built and the opportunity for revenues, there were hundreds of millions of pounds lost to football clubs during that period of time that is now being caught up with over a period of time, and Daniel will run that particular argument, and he'll run the argument about banking covenants and the amount of money they've got available to themselves. But the fans are not interested in that. If they've been told that the building of a stadium is going to make them more competitive with the opposition, and then the argument being run is that they can't meet the opposition because they've got a service debt, then you can't have it both ways.
Exactly.
So they're not wrong.
And that's precisely David's point. This is what they were sold. Well, the stadium will make us more competitive. If we're more competitive, we'll end up winning something. And David, down in Sydney, is rightly pointing out it's the back end of that promise that has come back to haunt him.
There's two parts. I mean, we are still early days in the life of that stadium.
Exactly.
Right? So, when they build a new stadium of that scale, that is a 50-year life asset. And the real benefit is not in the early years where you're still paying off a lot of the debt. The problem that they've got is to bridge that gap. So everything on the stadium side is working. The stadium is delivering record revenues.
Yeah.
It's delivering record non-football revenues. It's delivering an amazing experience for the fans in terms of a day out.
Of course.
Except, and this is the big except, the product on the pitch.
Yeah.
And I think that really, for me, is the key challenge that Spurs have got, is where do you get that balance between the kind of sustainability? Remember, Spurs are not. It's not like they're generating huge profits that they're tucking away in the pockets of the shareholders. They're not. They're still losing money.
Yeah.
The only question is, how much are you prepared to lose? How long are you prepared to fund those losses?
Yeah.
Now, again, as I mentioned before, across the road at Chelsea, they've taken a view they're prepared to fund them for a long time and go very, very deep. So they're already, last 4 years, I mentioned earlier, operating losses, 855 million over 4 years.
Right.
2 billion pound stadium still to build. They're prepared to go very deep. That gives Spurs a problem, but from a business perspective, you've got to get that balance right.
It's the same argument that Arsenal fans would have been pitching against Arsenal and David Dein in 2006 when the stadium was built and Arsene Wenger was asked to compromise the building of a side, and they've not won a Premier League title since. So it's not an argument that's immune to Spurs. It's an argument that landed right on the front lawns of Arsenal.
Yeah,
but even more
Arsenal were top 4 for 20 years.
Well, hang on. Only top 4.
They didn't win anything.
Yeah, but only
Tottenham are 14th as we speak.
Only
win
top
anything.
4. Correct. And if you look at when they've actually kind of loosened the purse strings, probably only in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's taken them almost 15 years from the opening of the stadium to actually start to loosen the purse strings a little
Sure.
bit.
Also got the shares.
David down under in Sydney, thanks for your call. Get to your bed. Dean is a Tottenham fan. Dean, we'll take your call, albeit you have to be brief for me as we're heading to a break. On you go. Good morning.
Good morning. Morning, chaps.
Morning.
David in Sydney, who I've spoken to often. It's just the fact that I think the fan base are completely unrealistic as to what, as a club, we can physically achieve. And I think Levy is doing his damnedest to try and drag us up from where we were in the year 2000 to be able to compete with these guys. And bearing in mind, for the likes of Chelsea, literally cheated the system, sort of broke the system, so they had to put rules in place. City have done exactly the same, and they've sort of forced themselves up to the top of the table, whilst Man United, the once giant of football, even they can't compete with it anymore.